could you just share your coming out story? I know that you've been working at Ernst & Young for over 30 years now. That's how old I am, by the way. I just wanted to point that out.
Authenticity, Chris.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. That's the next question. Why now? How did you decide that now was the time to start talking about this?
Yeah. You know, I'm actually really humbled to sit in an audience like this. And it's one of those few audiences where I was anxious about this. This is new to me in some ways. So, you know, it was about a year ago, I guess, you know the story well, that Chris came to me as the head of our inclusiveness efforts at Ernst & Young and asked me if I would be the closer, if you will, on the video Ernst & Young was going to do for the Trevor Project, or for the It Gets Better campaign. And as a senior leader in the firm, would I close the video? We'd have 5 or 6 of our LGBT professionals telling their story about how life got better, and would I close it? Yeah, sure, no problem at all. That was probably in February. So I think it wasn't until April or May that you know, the video was going to be shot the next day, and I was on an airplane the day before going through what the next day was going to, you know, reviewing things I had to do. And I was reading the script that the team had written for me to be the closer on this video. And as I read the script on the plane, again, to talk to LGBT youth, some of whom may be sitting there thinking about killing themselves, I read that script and I thought, I can't do this. How could I do that? How could I be so inauthentic? And I had had a glass of wine, I confess. So I sat there on the plane and said, what would I say? Unencumbered, what would I say? And I wrote what I would say. And I typed it up quickly on the plane, and that night I emailed it off to Chris. And I said, what do you think of that? And that was sort of the beginning. And so then so then the next day we shot the video, and I followed my own script. And then it was about a month between that and when the Trevor Project was going to do its awards and honor Ernst & Young for our efforts. And I had to accept the award for Ernst & Young.
We forced her. We absolutely forced her.
Yeah. Well, and knowing that the video was going to be released the next day. So keep in mind, the video had been shot, been in the can. I had a month to think about it and to back up. And then needed to accept the award on behalf of Ernst & Young. Once again, I could have accepted the award being inauthentic. And so wrote the remarks for that night, again, knowing the video was going to be released the next morning. And Chris was brilliant through this. She kept kind of holding my hand quietly saying, let's talk about what's going to happen. Because I was in denial. She's like, let's think about what might happen tomorrow. And so we talked it through. And so that night at the Trevor Project, as I'm giving this speech saying all the right things, about 3/4 of the way through, I had this sentence written in my speech that said, as a leader who is gay, and I got to that point in the speech that night, and I alluded to the fact that we were going to have a video being released the next day. I read the sentence as a leader who is gay. And as soon as I got that out of my mouth, someone in the audience, I don't know who it was, I hear this, whoa! And then I hear somebody else go, whoa! And then I hear this. And then it's a 5-minute standing ovation. And keep in mind, my mental image going into that night was when I uttered those words, I was going to get booed. That's what I thought.
Why?
Because I was 52 years in the closet, 32 years at Ernst & Young in the closet, and I thought the reaction would be, where in the hell have you been, you coward? That's what I fully expected that. And so instead I get a 5-minute standing ovation. I mean, I just stood there and the tears just started to pour and I couldn't stop it. And I'm looking at our Ernst & Young team. Our chairman was right there in the front. I'm looking at, and I'm going, what is happening? And so then everybody sits down and I try to start again. And all I could muster was a whisper. I thought, I've got to start that sentence over. And I said, as a leader. I mean, and that's how much it came out. I just could whisper. And then I just like this strength. 52 years of silence broke, and the strength went on, and it was the end of my beginning. That That was the end of the beginning of the journey for me. The learning I had, the outpouring, that first positive reaction, the thousands of emails I got from around the world taught me so much immediately. And they were emails not just from, people identify as LGBT, but it was from parents with gay kids. It was from it was from all people in all walks of life. And what I learned through all those emails, people sharing glorious stories, was that difference matters. It was stories about, by you being who you are, I gave somehow them permission to be who they are, whatever that is. And it was all about their difference of uncertainties when they walk in the front door of the office every day, of just feeling doubtful or having certain uncertainties. It wasn't about necessarily being gay. It wasn't about being a woman. It wasn't about being this or that or any kind of special thing. It was just about feeling different. And that's when I realized this is about everyone. This is about the fact that difference matters.
Well, you called me out on authenticity already, and then you just mentioned it again. So what does authenticity mean to you, and what is something that you would like to share with the rest of the audience about how they might leverage it?
Well, authenticity is so important today. I mean, that's what everybody demands in their leaders, is complete authenticity. And I guess what I learned harshly is that you are not authentic until you're totally authentic. I thought I was one of the most authentic leaders, and I thought I could just keep this private part private. God, I was so wrong, so wrong. And I've learned that being authentic isn't. I'm a woman. I'm gay. I'm an extraordinary introvert in a world that demands you to be an extrovert. I do all these things that all of us are. It's all of our little differences and insecurities. And until we as leaders are totally who we are, everybody around us can't be who they are. And that's why I've learned authenticity is so important. Is everybody just want to be who they are, and until we are, everybody's trying to act much like I did for a long while, trying to act like somebody I'm not, so that I can be successful. And that was just wrong.
So you do have quite of a big footprint around the globe. You know a lot of people, you've met a lot of people. You've made this list that I have to keep saying because I'm still impressed. Even after all these years and even knowing you, the 100 most powerful women in the world, now 5 years. How private, how public are you with everything? So as you look at all of this, you say you're an introvert, but now you're sharing with all of us. How has this discussion helped to shape that for you?
Well, this discussion, this whole coming out, being on the Forbes 100 most powerful women list, so I was on the Forbes, you said 5 years, okay? Now I'm out and on the list.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So they didn't kick you off.
You're right, they didn't kick me off. In fact, it's actually been really interesting for Forbes, I think. Moira Forbes did an interview with me that really allowed me to tell my story, and it's been transformational for her as well. This has been a journey. It's a good journey. The point is, I realize that being on the Forbes list around the world gives you an incredible platform. It's really interesting. You can go into countries and say things because you're on that list that those in those countries can't say. There's an incredible responsibility and obligation and opportunity that comes with that, I think. And I really take that very seriously. Having worked for Hillary Clinton back in the 90s, I watched her as First Lady go into countries and use that platform that she had to give voice to women who are otherwise invisible. Mm-hmm. And so I look at this and it gives me an opportunity to do things. And now it gives me an opportunity to do more because of who I am. But I can't say it's entirely comfortable. Keep in mind, I went from a world of, I lived in Indianapolis, Indiana. I grew up in Indiana, was married. I love Indiana. I'm a Hoosier through and through. And then I got transferred to Washington, D.C. It was temporary, only supposed to be there 2 years. My husband didn't come because I was supposed to go back. So I get to D.C., I move in, I'm in DuPont Circle. I still live in DuPont Circle. And I started to keeping in mind, in Indiana, I was an incredible athlete, very well known. I mean, so I was not anonymous. I was known to everyone. And that meant I was known in the way I needed to be versus who I was. And I didn't even know who I was. I was conforming to some norm. I was trying to be who they were versus who I was. Came to Washington and started to discover who I was because I got to be anonymous. And that allowed me to figure out who I was. So then I compartmentalized. So now I'm living the private life, and I have my what I do for a living life versus who I am life, and they're compartmentalized for a long while, 20 years, and then come out. Now the anonymity's gone. I'm having to get used to blending the worlds, but the one thing I do know is that giving up privacy was so worth it. I don't even know who I was before a year ago. It has been such a phenomenal learning every day, and I'm still learning. And as Chris knows, the reason I'm uncomfortable coming into an environment like this is because I'm still learning so much. And you all are so further along in the journey, and I feel like I am a 2-year-old. But it is really neat that at 53 years of age, you get to learn this much every day all over again. And that is a blessing.
It struck me that as you were saying that most of us struggle with coming out over and over and over again, and saying, how difficult that is, because at some point you just wish everyone knew.
Yeah.
And at the same time I'm hearing from you, there's a private side of me that doesn't want to tell anyone, and that everyone does know. But does everyone know?
You feel like everyone knows, even though they don't. But it is interesting, this process. Someone in our organization, Mike Sayers, told me early on, he said, you're going to have to come out every day. And I didn't understand that when he told me that. I remember him sitting in my office telling me that, and I didn't get it. I get it now. I think everyone, to the extent to collectively together we can be significant in our communities, in our societies, in our companies, in our countries. That's our obligation.
As you look out, you see a lot of faces out here, people who may be sitting in my seat and talking to an executive like yourself. As for closing words, what would be your advice to them in talking to executives that they may be talking with and trying to create that safe environment that says, hey, it's okay, it's either okay to come out or it's okay to take your time? What words of advice do you have for us?
Keep doing what you're doing, which is make it safe. Try to just make it as safe. Chris made it safe for me. She knew about me for 5 years or more. Long, and never breached that confidence. And I trusted her. And she gave me reason to trust her and made it safe. Foundational, as you all know that. But keep in mind the perspective of an executive who's really struggling and so defined by what they do, so defined by that versus who they are, fearful of being defined by who they are, that they may have that same fear of, that my thought of I was going to get booed versus applauded. It took the community to help me understand after the fact. I remember calling a friend of mine who runs an institute focused on communications to deal with LGBT issues. I remember calling Martha and saying, Martha, why'd they applaud? And she said, Beth, you have to understand. Everybody understands that this is complicated and everybody's on their own journey and it's all in everybody's own time. And when that right time comes, we applaud. We're not going to be critical. You were an ally the whole way, and that mattered. And that's important, I think, for people who still aren't ready to just know and to talk about that as well, and to help your executives understand that who they are matters as much as what they do. It is that simple, but boy, until I was on the other side of it, I didn't get it. And I look at that and go, how could I have been such an idiot? But I was, and I heard Bernice speak this morning at a breakfast we held, and she said, when you're in the frame, you can't see the picture. And I thought that was such a powerful image of, I was in the frame, I couldn't see the picture until I can get out of the frame, and now I get it, and I get it so powerfully, which is why I think it's just helpful to make it safe, keep talking people through it, and trying to understand what they may have fears that they don't really want to articulate.
Well, I have to say that on behalf of the Ernst & Young team, we're glad you articulated it.
Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to have to say, a long time ago we met. You were very intimidating.
Because I'm tall.
Because you're tall. That was the only reason. I'm glad you're a friend now.
We are, I just say, I mean, you all know Chris. It's an honor to sit on the stage with Chris, who has been instrumental in this journey for me. And I will tell you that at that moment of, this video is going to be released the next day, you're going to give that speech that night, this was the person in my office going, before the event, going, you okay? You okay? Let's talk about what tomorrow might be like. You talk about someone throwing you on their back and carrying you for a while. This was the person, and I'm forever grateful.